Welcome to Talking Funny Cars, and boy, do we have a special guest today, Mr. J.R. Todd, NHRA Nitro Funny Car World Champion 2018. J.R., thanks for being here.
Hey, buddy, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, you're welcome, man. So, man, we're two blessed guys. We're guys that get to live our dream, get to drive our fuel funny cars on the weekend, and the world wants to know, what's that like?
Honestly, I feel like we take it for granted,
Yeah.
There's a small few of us in the world that get to actually do what we want to do for a living, that we enjoy, that we love, and drive a Nitro funny car. I always compare it to a little kid playing Little League baseball or Pee Wee football that wants to make it to the pros one day. The amount that actually do that are like very few, and racing junior dragsters as a kid, like this is what I wanted to do. And to actually make it there, it's kind of a surreal feeling. You want it to happen, but you don't think you're ever going to get there when you're a kid.
Describe to the audience, what that's like.
There's a lot of armchair quarterbacks out there and keyboard warriors that, if you screw up, like they're going to pick you apart and tell you what you did wrong. But a lot of them have never stepped foot in a race car and don't know what it's like. And for me, this, like you said, this is something that you've wanted to do your whole life. And this is how I make my living.
Yeah.
Not everybody does this for a living. So when I get out of the car and I have emotions, whether it's I won or lost or something happened, the car blew up, or I'm throwing my gloves at the body, it's not because I'm pouting or throwing a fit. Like that's just like my emotion in the heat of the moment. Like I'm upset or whatever. Like I'm not going to hide how I feel. And when your adrenaline's pegged after you get out of the car, like sometimes it's hard to mask those emotions.
Yeah, well, it is, because, let's be real. What we're doing really kind of encompasses every emotion you possibly can, right? You're crawling into that race car. You got to psychologically prepare yourself. You got to kind of be a tough guy a little bit, right? Here. And when things don't go your way, it can affect you, right? Let's be real. And everyone has their routine. What's yours?
I like to have a routine on how, I put my safety equipment on, sitting in a tow vehicle, listen to, the pairs in front of me, whether they're making it down the track or not, just kind of getting prepared for what to expect when you're in the car out there on the track. So once I get in my routine, just like I said, putting my safety equipment on the same way, walking around the car the same way, getting in the car, just make sure if I do everything the same way that I'm not going to forget something.
Yeah.
Most likely. It's not about being superstitious or anything like that. I don't wear the same underwear or have a lucky rabbit's foot inside the car or anything like that, because I feel like if that works one time and the next week you go out there and lose, like then you're kind of messing with your mind. Like, well, that superstition didn't work, so now what do I do? So for me, it's just about having a routine and just once you get in the car, like there's so many things going on outside the car that people don't realize that you can hear so-and-so talking about this, or you see people like just doing stuff out to the side. I don't think you're watching them. It's pretty a neat moment when you're inside the car in the staging lanes, just taking it all in, listening to whoever on the PA calling the runs. And like I said, trying to get a feel for what's going on out there on the track. And then once the car starts, like everything you've thought about, just like that's blocked out. Like you go to the autopilot, like you're not thinking about anything, and our job is to react to what's going on. And the more runs you make in a fuel car, your mind slows it down for you and processes it for you, but you don't have time to think about it, because if you think, it's too late and you done screwed up the run. So like you just gotta react and drive by the seat of the pants, and that comes with experience over time.
It does. I always believe that every time you make a run, your brain becomes a computer and it downloads that run, and then you respond and react differently to what the car is doing.
Yeah, and there's sometimes that your brain reacts to it and you get out of the car and it takes you maybe 10 minutes or so after the run to finally like understand like what you just did or what you felt in the car, or even go back and talk to the crew chiefs after they downloaded the run. They're like, well, it did this. Like, okay, well, that's why I did that. Like, it's see the pants stuff that your brain, like you said, becomes trained to react to those things, but you might not even know why you did it when you get out of the car at the top end. And then once you get, a chance, your adrenaline wears off and you can kind of process the run. Then you're like, oh yeah, I did this there. I think I shut it off here. It put a hole out at this point down the track. Just a lot of things go on in 3.8, 3.9 seconds and 1,000 feet that those people back home watching don't understand. I mean,
that's right.
I would say a funny car driver that makes a good run down the track where the car is going perfectly straight and makes it look easy, he's probably driving his ass off inside the car to keep that thing that straight.
That's right. So we want to talk about some of the technology in JR's Toyota DHL Nitro funny cars. So JR won his first championship in a Toyota Camry and is now in the brand new Supra. So let's talk about the differences between those two bodies and your input. The world wants to know.
Yeah, so when I got started driving the DHL funny car in 2017, it was the Toyota Camry, like you said, and they had utilized that body for several years, I think almost 10 years, and was still competitive. We won the championship with it in 2018. Dell won the championship in 2015 with it. So there was really, I mean, aerodynamically, it wasn't like it was that outdated compared to the newer, you know, Chevy and Mopar bodies and the Ford, obviously. But when I got in, I didn't know what I didn't know. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Just that's the only funny car that I had driven. And for me, being a small guy, like I wanted to sit up as high as possible. The doghouse, which is the protective part of the dash that goes over the injector area in the body, like it's kind of a small opening between the doghouse and the roof line in the Camry. So you're like, where you're looking with my head pulled on the chin strap is a very narrow area.
Sure.
And like I felt like I couldn't see much. I could see the arms of the injector, but I couldn't see the injector at all. So my first couple times, I'm like, how do you guys see the track? They're like, well, once you hit the gas and, you know, the tires grow, then like the angle changes and you can see where you're going. I'm like, huh, okay. So I struggled driving that car the first half of 2017, just with keeping the thing in the groove, learning how to steer it compared to the dragster. Like you carry over a bunch of bad habits from driving the dragster for all those years to the funny car that you might as well retrain yourself and throw all that out the window. Relate. I mean, the speed, the sensation, like, yeah, that prepares you, but the driving aspect, like it's totally different. So I struggled with that for a while. And then, you know, once it kind of clicked for me to what to do and what not to do, then it's like, all right, I want to be able to see in this thing. And to back up, another thing with the Toyota Camry body is you have to have a shorter roll cage on the car just because of the roof line. The roof line with the Camry compared to the Supra is way different. The Camry has a super long greenhouse area, which is the driver's compartment basically of the car, to where when we got to the Supra, it's a lot narrower. So I'll get into that. But yeah, I mean, it took me a while to figure out how to line up the car and this and that, and to get used to, all right, once this thing gets going, like don't get aggressive with the wheel because you really can't see where you're going for the first, I don't know, up to 100 feet maybe.
That's wild.
Yeah, like it's kind of like you're guessing where you're going. I mean, you are, but you aren't.
You're feeling where you're going.
Exactly. So when I first got that thing, you know, I hit the cones in testing and just looked like an idiot driving that thing. We had the laid back headers on that we don't now.
Hard to drive.
Yeah, it was just an animal, hard to drive. Like mad props to Dell for handing that thing over because he made it look easy to drive when he got in it. So once we got to working with Toyota and at the time TRD and Slugger and, you know, Andy Graves and everybody there on developing the you know, Toyota GR Supra body, like that got me excited because they're coming to me and like, hey, what would you like to see different from the Camry to the Supra? And it started out with just me sitting in the car of the Camry with my cell phone. They're like, hey, hold this basically where you would look, you know, take pictures, take video, you know, send those videos off to those guys and start like that. And then we worked with Fox and NHRA with a helmet camera. Like at that time that was big in NASCAR, visor camera. So we got Fox and NHRA to approve that, and you know, started doing that. I think maybe 2017, 2018, somewhere around that area, maybe a little after that actually, and kind of used that footage for Toyota as well. Like, all right, this is, you know, what I can see, how much I don't see actually. And, you know, my biggest thing that I didn't realize was how high the dash was in the Toyota Camry compared to the Supra. Like I said, I couldn't see the track, the injector at all, just sitting static on the starting line. So once we got the Toyota Supra, you know, went to Florida and tested it, like we rolled the thing up to the starting line just to see how I would feel in it. Didn't, it wasn't running, just me sitting there in it. And like I could see the track just sitting there like staging, like, whoa, like this is way different. They're like, you actually might have a problem driving this thing
oversteering
because you can see so much. I'm like, whatever. Like I think they're right. Like it was almost like driving a dragster, how much I could see with
vision.
The roof line was shortened up, and that therefore we made the roof taller and the roll cage could be taller so I could sit more comfortable where I wasn't, kind of scrunched down trying to get as high as possible with the Camry body. So yeah, that was another learning curve with the Supra, but I feel like what we did with that, with the dash is lower, the windshield's bigger, I can sit more straight up and down and be more comfortable. It's not only more comforting for me as a driver, but it's more comfortable as well, the way you sit. And I think it's a safer body. Not that the Camry was dangerous at all, but just things progress over time. I feel like they knocked it out of the park, and I feel like it really resembles what it's supposed to look like, a Toyota GR Supra, that you see driving down the highway. Yeah, I mean, I had one for a couple years, and they're fast, man. Like they're little hot rods, and that's what the newer generation that we're trying to attract to the sport, like that's what they can relate to. Like that's like one of the hottest cars for younger kids, not a family sedan.
That's right. And your funny car is personalized, right? And it's something that I noticed in your car, and I actually asked you about a few months ago. You have a steering wheel that's different than everyone else's. And I know you worked with a group to develop that steering wheel. Tell the world about your steering wheel.
Yeah, so we worked with Max Pappas and his group at MPI. And for those that don't know who Max Pappas is, I mean, he was a badass IndyCar driver. Like when I was a younger kid, like I remember watching Mad Max. He was good, So once he got finished racing, he felt like there was a need for safer and better steering wheels, and started making really good steering wheels for the IndyCar guys and then NASCAR guys. And you see his steering wheels across the board in motorsports pretty much, and circle track and road racing. And then decided, hey, let's try to work with these drag racing guys. And I had talked to Max way before we had went down this route. He talked about he would like to get into drag racing, and finally worked with Slugger and Max on a prototype. It started out with like a 3D printed wheel. Like they had different versions, widths and things like that, and trying to get it similar to the Butterfly. So once again, sitting in a car basically with a plastic wheel, whether it's this wide or this narrow, like what are you comfortable with? And finally kind of narrowed it down to what I thought would be a good steering wheel. And the reason we went to this is because the Butterfly has been around since how long?
Forever,
right?
The 50s,
the 50s or 60s, right?
Yeah.
Not that there's anything wrong with it either, but over time, like if there's something you can improve on, why not at least try it? When it comes to safety and things like that, I'm all for trying to make things better.
Absolutely.
And for me, once again, being a newer guy in the funny car, when these things drop a cylinder, you lose that much downforce on one side of the car where you really got to get after the steering wheel down track. And sometimes like you get maxed out and you see the wall, the center line, it's like,
that's all I got.
Yeah, like do I lift or like do we go for the win? Like it sucks being in that position. And I felt like the angle of the wheel, like I was getting maxed out and couldn't really turn the wheel anymore.
Sure. With the Butterfly.
With the Butterfly.
Yeah.
And once we started using the MPI wheel, it's thicker so you can grip it more. It's got foam within the wheel to where like if there's an accident, things like that, like they feel like that's going to be safer as well. But I like that it's thicker. You can grab it more. You're not fighting to get a hold of the wheel, like when you let go of the brake, go to the wheel to where you got to be in the exact spot.
That's right.
And the angle of the wheel of how it's mounted is kind of more like a dragster, to where when it does drop a cylinder, like you can really get after the steering wheel, which I like. And then the coupler where it mounts to the steering shaft is different than the Butterfly, where over time I feel like the Butterfly wheel develops a lot of slop.
Yep.
To where it has play where you might be doing this and there's no steering input.
Yep.
Just because those things wear out over time. To where Max kind of utilized what they do with the NASCAR side of things and sprint car world and all that, and made that better to where it's positive input as soon as you turn that thing, to where once again first few races, like, hey, like maybe that wheel's a little too good for you, like you're oversteering this thing, like We had to change steering arms to
Slow it down.
slow it down. So
Yep.
it was a trial and error progress type thing over time. But I feel like we got it dialed into where we want it now, and I highly recommend it. But I think it's definitely a good thing to have in a Nitro funny car, a dragster as well.
Sure. One thing that I always love when I see that DHL funny car out there is Scott's name. It's still in the car. Scott Kalitta's name is still in that car. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, once again, going back to the junior dragster days, it was around the time that I got started was Scott's heyday in a Top Fuel car. They kicked everybody's ass.
They did.
And that, Kalitta Air dragster for like 93, 94, 95, that era, like they were bad to the bone. So I didn't know Scott obviously back then, but once I got into a Top Fuel car in 2000, Nicky Bonifani was at Bruce Litton's at the time, and he, worked on those championship years with Scott. So I always heard stories about Scott and how much of a badass driver he was and what he did inside the car. Like, they're trying to tell me to try this and that.
Yeah.
And then once I started racing NHRA 2006, and Scott came back and was driving and getting to know him and hang out with him, like all the stories you hear, like this dude's badass.
They're real.
Yeah, he was fun to be around, a great guy. And then, with his accident, like I was there when that happened, like something that you'll never forget, just a terrible time for the sport. And then you get hired at Kalitta's and driving Connie's personal dragster that Sean Langdon drives now. And he's telling me, things that Scott did inside the car, like, why don't you try this? Like, whoa, like you're trying to, not compare me to Scott, like suggesting like I do things that Scott did in the car. Like that meant a lot to me, that he felt the confidence in me as a driver to do something that, a two-time world champion was doing inside the car.
Yeah.
And, of course, the DHL car was kicking butt back then with Del Worsham driving, and still had Scott's name on the window. And, then you get the opportunity in 2017, the end of 2016, like, hey, Del's going to, race with his family, and his dad wants to do his own thing. Like, do you want to drive this car? I'm like, I didn't have to think twice about it. Like,
yes.
Hell yes, absolutely. I want to drive that car. Nothing against the dragster that I was driving. I had a lot of fun working with those guys and driving for Connie. But like in the back of my mind, I always wanted to drive a funny car if it was the right opportunity. And I felt like this is the best opportunity I was ever going to have in my career. And yeah, it's been a blessing. And, I think that I can speak for anybody that's driven that car after Scott. Like, we're not trying to be Scott Kalitta driving that car, and we all understand like the importance of that car. Like, that's probably the most important car within the Kalitta organization, just because of what happened to Scott, and it's forever Scott's car, and we're trying to carry on his legacy but not fill his shoes, because those are some massive shoes to fill. And to be able to win races and win a championship in that car, I feel like that's the ultimate way to honor him and his family. And we won Gainesville at the beginning of this year. Scott's wife, Kathy, like, she hadn't been to a race since Scott was driving, and came to Gainesville when we won.
This year?
Yes.
That's fantastic.
So it was awesome to finally double up for one, but to win in Scott's car and be able to give the family the trophy at the end of the day, that's the only way I feel like I could ever pay back Connie and everybody at Kalitta Motorsports and the family for letting me drive Scott's car.
Yeah, make him proud.
Absolutely.
Right? And driving for a legend, Connie Kalitta. What a character Connie is, right? Who's burnt more nitro and blown up more engines than Connie Kalitta? Right?
Absolutely.
Let's be real.
A guy, starts an airline to fund his drag racing team.
Love it.
People think it's the opposite way around, because now the airline is like so successful, and it's crazy when you go to, some of these big airports, you see Kalitta Air, like, it makes you proud when you see one of those airplanes. Like, dude, like, that's the boss right there. And he started that to keep what we're doing going to this point, 50 some odd years later. It just, I don't know. The stories with Connie are endless. And I feel like a lot of people think, he's really hard to deal with, and which he might have been, early on. But when he called me in 2014 to come work there, like, I thought it was a joke, for one, because he called from somebody else's phone and the number popped up, and I'm like, hey, what's going on? Thinking it was this person. It wasn't. It was Connie. And hey, I want you to come drive my car. I'm like, whatever. Like, no, like, look up.
You really thought it wasn't him?
Yeah, like,
Thought somebody messed with
this is Connie. I'm like, oh shit, like, it really is him.
Yeah.
So it's Friday night. I'm in Indy. They're racing in Vegas. Like, I need you to be out here first thing tomorrow morning. I'm like, yeah, right. How am I going to get there unless you send a plane here, which he wasn't going to do.
Yep.
He's like, find a ticket and
figure it out.
Call me back. And I did. Like, so from that point until now, like, he's never, been hard on me or anything like that. But if I screw up or he thinks I can do something better, like, he's going to let you know.
Of course.
And he expects, honesty and the best from you. And that's why he hired me, because he felt like I was capable of getting the job done. Yep. So I'm still here, 10 years later, which it's been a blessing. You got to be serious about your job, but at the same time, like, you got to know when to relax and have fun and cut up, because this stuff will eat you alive. I mean, you go home and eat, sleep, and breathe, like, you lose sleep over this stuff, and you got to kind of draw the line on when to have fun and be serious.
Yeah. And we want to hear what his Fast Five are. So, GR, who's your favorite driver? Any class? Nope, all time.
All time.
Yep.
I mean, back to driving junior dragsters, like, John Forrest was always my favorite.
Yep.
He was kicking everybody's butt in the 90s. Like, no one could beat him. He did long, smoky burnouts, crazy interviews, had, like, cool paint schemes with the flames and all that.
Yep.
And then fast forward, like, you're driving a Nitro funny car and getting a line up against him.
Yep.
And of course, like, I like racing, but at the same time, he'll do things that make you so mad. But I would have to say, like, that was probably always my favorite driver.
John Force. Favorite racetrack?
Sonoma. Even though I'm from Indiana, I grew up racing at IRP. Like, that's my favorite race, but my favorite track is Sonoma. For whatever reason, like, we've done really well there in the past, and I love wine country, love red wine. But the staff and everybody at that track, like, they treat like royalty there. They go above and beyond, and I don't know. It's just a cool place, and it's always a packed house. I feel like they do a really good job at that racetrack.
Understandable. Favorite funny car of all time?
That's a tough one. This was before my time, before I was really into drag racing, but like the Blue Max funny car.
Oh yeah,
there's so many replicas of it.
Yep.
But there's so many to choose from. I mean, I worked on Gilbertson's car when we did the Jungle Gym throwbacks, and hearing stories about Jungle. So it's a toss-up between those two.
It's fair. Favorite funny car race of all time when you were in the seat?
Another toss-up. There's the one in Sonoma where we smoked the tires against Beckman and chased him down, which that kind of reminded me of bracket racing. You're spotting somebody and you're just waiting there, like,
pick them off.
Yeah, I'm like, I think I'm going to catch him. And then, you'll blow him by him within the last 10, 20 feet or whatever. But that really sticks out with the fans. I mean, that was my first funny car win. But 2018, the World Finals, we clinched the championship first round, then go on to win the race. And I feel like there's not a whole lot of people that have won both in the same day. I mean, we definitely didn't need to go out and win the race. I mean, your adrenaline's kind of wearing off by the end of the day just because you're so pumped about winning the championship, but you still have to focus on driving, on trying to win the race. So, like, that I was spent after that, and that was definitely a cool moment having 2 trophies at the end of the day.
Yep. And describe what it's like driving that Toyota DHL Nitro funny car in 15 seconds.
They're so unpredictable. Like, they are animals. They're dirty, but I love it. I mean, Caps and I were talking the other day, like, making fun of Justin Ash. Like, you'll never know what it's like because you don't get black boogers and
that's right.
That's things like that when you blow your nose. So, like, nothing compares to a Nitro funny car.
Agree. JR, thanks for coming on the show. We loved having you. We learned a lot about your team, you, DHL, Scott Kalitta, the whole thing. We also want to thank Doc and Bubba's right here in Motton, Pennsylvania for allowing us to film in your facility. We love it here. And ladies and gentlemen, be sure you tune back in for the next episode of Talkin' Funny Cars with Buddy Hull.